is all about greed and vanity. And the times that we tend to look at ourselves more than we look at others. And certainly about the times that we forget that God is our God. And God is it. There are no other gods. So, let's go there. The gospel opens up with a story about inheritance. And I'll get into that a little bit more, but I don't know about you, but in my family, I think we get the gold star for issues of inheritance. 2 generations behind me, I had a great cousin, I guess it would be. I don't know how you do that first and second stuff, but I had a cousin who my aunt had willed money to my mother, but my cousin took the money. My aunt said, take the money now. And my mother said, no, I will wait until the right time. And in the meantime, that cousin took the money. So that when my aunt died, my mother didn't get the money that was willed to her. All of a sudden, it wasn't there. I have an uncle who is a lawyer, so he knows how to stay within the law. And my aunt had given the contents of her apartment to my mother when, upon her death, I think that's how it read, upon her death. Well, before her death, that uncle went into my aunt's apartment and took anything that was worth anything. So that when my aunt died, my mother went into an apartment filled with junk. I have aunts on the other side who were nice and even. They left even amounts of money to everyone. And then there were some that if they didn't like you, they didn't like the way you thought, or they didn't like what you said, or you didn't visit them enough, then you didn't get part of the inheritance. And I have to say that I am not immune to the issues of inheritance, because there was a time in my life where I could have gotten an inheritance, a certain piece of an inheritance, and a decision was made that it's not going to be that way, and I raised my voice and I said, well, is that fair? And it was challenged, I was challenged back. Don't ask what's fair, it just is. So this is the stuff that we deal with in life. Some of us deal with it more than others. Yes, my family, we got the gold star in there. But there are others. There are other things in life that we feel entitled to. And not only do we kind of wonder, like, well, did I get what I deserve? But what are we giving to the generation then that will come after us? And I think, now I'm going way off to another subject here, but I think of the fires and the floods of our earth, and I wonder what I am doing, even in my small way, to contribute to the fires and the floods. And I think of all the plastics that we use, all the oil that we use, the gas that we use, all the energy that we use, especially during these hot days where the air conditioning is just going, day after day after day after day. Some people need that, but not everybody needs the air conditioning as low as it is. Yet, for some, it's important, to others, it's just comfortable. But what small thing am I doing to combat that, at least a little bit? And then still on another platform, there's the whole thing of stuff. We all have stuff. Better Homes and Gardens says, all your belongings that spark joy should be in your home. They should have a place in your home. Bloomberg Business says, buy now, pay later, don't worry about it. Greed. Our world tells us to have as much as we can. And I'm sure that you'll all remember, I don't know what it was like in Texas, but up here, there was a run on toilet paper at the beginning of COVID. You couldn't find it. because people started taking it not knowing where the next would come from, and all of a sudden there wasn't any on the shelves. Because we were afraid, and I think fear kind of controls greed a little bit. And then more recently there was the rum on baby formula. So much so that now when I go into a store, baby formula is under lock and key, so that the people who need it can have it. Our first lesson from Ecclesiastes talks about vanity of vanities and says, stop looking in the mirror, but instead look beyond yourself. Turn your attention outward. And Paul, in his letter to the Colossians, spells it out a little bit more clearly. And he says, avoid the things of earth. Imagine, he was saying this 2,000 years ago, and we're still being reminded of it today. And it's a good reminder of us, for us, that if we look at the things of earth, we see the haves and have-nots. And then we worry about, what did I get? What didn't I get? Or we stop worrying about, what can I give? Because we're still wanting, what can I get? And we see differences. But if we look to God, says Paul, we will see that we have more in common than our differences. And then Luke brings it right home with the whole thing of the inheritance, where the younger brother says, come on, Jesus, tell my brother to give me more of the inheritance. And in Jesus' day, inheritance was controlled by law. And if you go into Leviticus or you go into Numbers, that's what they followed. And it said, the oldest will get 2/3 of the inheritance. Generally, if it was a boy, it was the oldest son who got the 2/3 inheritance. But there is even a place in, I believe it's Leviticus, that says, well, what if there are no sons? And it says, well, then the daughters will divide the inheritance. But going back to that, the oldest always got 2/3, and then the 1/3 that was left, that was given to the other children, and it was divided between them. So this son wanted to go against the law, against the doings of the day. And Jesus, give me more. And Jesus told the parable, right, of the farmer. And it must have been a beautiful summer filled with sun and rain, because he got lots of crops. And his barns were not big enough. And so he went to crash those barns down and build bigger ones, so that all the grain would fit. And when all the barns were filled and all the grain was there, he sat back and he said, now I can relax. I can eat, drink, and be merry. And that's when Jesus said, you fool, what happens when you die? There will be nothing. You will not have anything, because your grain will all be stuffed in your barns. But if you could look outward, now I'm putting words in Jesus' mouth, but if you could look outward and give that to the poor, give it to the needy, be with the lonely, clothe the naked, go on and on and on, then wouldn't your life be richer? And that's what our call is today, is to make our life rich in God. So not to be a barn builder, but a barn sharer. Open the doors of your barn and share your wealth as generously as you can. And Martin Luther helps us with this in the Catechism, right in that first commandment, when he talks about have no other gods. And he asks, what does this mean? And he says we are to fear, love, and trust God with above all things. So no matter, like, I'm kind of pen crazy, but this can't be my God. This microphone that makes my voice louder cannot be my God. My God is only at that table or in the Word. That's our God. So, what can we do in life to help us, to remind us who we can be? I tripped over this twice already. I had a CSAT with me this morning, and I always see teenagers with these, like if they're going to sports games or whatever, they don't hold too much, but they hold what a kid needs. And I thought, oh, maybe this might be a good size sack or an amount of things that I could take, not things that are important to me, but things that remind me of what is important in life. So, I have in this sack a shoe. Unless I walk in the shoes of another person, I will not have true empathy. A shoe reminds me that I have to take time to learn the story of another, both the hardships and the joys, and then I could be a person of empathy. Food. Right, we all know food. And Tina mentioned food earlier, that, to give to the pantry. And I was thinking, well, what would it be if we tithed our food? Like every time I went shopping, if I spent $100, 10%, $10 comes right off the top. That's the food that goes to the pantry. It's just a way to think about it. It's a way to think about sharing what's in my barn, rather than having extra in my pantry downstairs that I don't necessarily need today, while somebody else is hungry today. Cross. The cross of Christ reminds me that I am to be a person of faith, that it's always my God that comes first. So I have this little heart, but it's also a cookie cutter. And I think of the sweetness of love. If we can extend love to one another, how sweet our world will be. My watch, put it in the bag. I was so lost this morning. But my watch represents time, the time that I can spend with another. Maybe pulling a little loneliness out of their life and putting company in their life, or spending time with another and finding out what makes them sad or happy, and being a friend. So the time we spend with each other. I think that's it. So those are the things that I packed in my cinch sack. What would you pack? What would be the reminders for you to put God first and to be selfless? And what would it mean to open the doors of your barn, whatever your barn is, your house, your car, your food, your things, your time, your kindness, your ability to be nurturing, to share your talents, your faith, your money, your church, even your personal power? What would it mean to give all of that away? Living God rich means to eat, drink, and be merry with the outcasts, the poor, the homeless, the lonely, and more. And when we take our sights off ourselves and put it on another, we are also putting our sights on God. As Luther says, if the heart is right with God, and we keep God first, everything else will fall into place. And maybe, just maybe, then there would be enough toilet paper and formula for everyone. And we'd all have less stuff, but we would be richer in our relationships. We might fight less and be more kind. There would be less greed and more sharing, less yelling and more singing. Less killing and more embracing, less hunger and more filled bellies, less tears and more smiles. So today, my friends, we are called to be rich towards God. Think not of ourselves, but of others. And indeed, then, we can eat, drink, and be merry with God. Amen.